We are right on the cusp of spring training being officially delayed. We're deep into this MLB lockout, and spring training is supposed to start in less than a week, and we have basically no progress toward a deal. But Commissioner Rob Manfred met with the media today in Florida. What did he have to say? What is the latest on the lockout, and what is going to happen with the MLB season moving forward? So all of that is coming up next.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on this show we provide episodes 3 days a week for now until the lockout ends, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, and I'm a lifelong fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available on all platforms, including YouTube as well, so check us out there if you have not already. Coming up on today's show, we're going to talk about the latest with the lockout. It's been a whole lot of nothing for the most part since the lockout began in the early morning hours of December 2nd. And so we're 2 months plus into this lockout, and basically no substantial progress has been made, but these things can change on a dime. Not that I expect that. But the latest was that the players are the last ones to have made a proposal, and the league said it was going to do a counteroffer, and then a couple days later, they said, never mind, no, we're not. And, I mean, they're under legal obligation to continue to bargain, and so I don't really understand that strategy of just saying we're not going to make a counteroffer. Also, something that happened that we haven't even discussed is that the league requested federal mediation, and right off the bat, I said that I didn't think that there was a chance that the players would agree to this. And to me, it was a kind of a PR tactic by the league, basically saying, we can't deal with these players. They're so unreasonable. Please help us, Mr. Government man. And plus, I mean, the league is just in a much more powerful position, and they've got connections in Washington, and there was just no way that the players were going to go for it. And sure enough, the next day, they rejected this concept and just said, we're ready to negotiate. How about we just negotiate? And part of their point, too, was that getting a mediator up to speed would require time. And why not just continue to negotiate? And so I think that the players did a good job there, generally speaking, because it kind of nobody really cares that they rejected it. I think the league was hoping that there would be this big outcry about the players rejecting this help. I'm doing air quotes for those of you not watching on YouTube. I just don't believe that that would speed up the process at all. What would speed up the process is just a continued back and forth. So I haven't heard a lot of people saying, like, what's up with this? But the league said they weren't going to do a counteroffer, and now we're hearing, in fact, on Saturday, they're going to present a counteroffer. And we have John Heyman, who's a well-known MLB reporter for MLB Network and Audacy Sports, reporting this morning that his sources say MLB will make concessions on key economic issues, hoping to trigger more compromising by the union. While owners are expressing optimism a deal will be struck to keep the season start date as March 31st, the new offer still thought unlikely to avert a delay to spring training. So that's an optimistic tweet in a world where we haven't seen a lot of optimistic tweets regarding the MLB lockout. So also of note was the fact that Commissioner Rob Manfred met with reporters today in Florida. The owners were having their quarterly meetings in Florida this week. And at the conclusion of them, Rob Manfred had a press conference. And basically nothing too substantial came out of this press conference. There's a lot of kind of little things he said that got attention, but I wouldn't say anything was too substantive. It was kind of more talk than anything. I mean, among the things he said, this was generating some confusion, honestly. He said that we have agreed, again, air quotes, we have agreed to a universal designated hitter, and we have agreed to, what was the other thing he said? To eliminating draft pick compensation, the qualifying offer rules. But what he means when he says agreed is simply that in their offers to players, the league has agreed that those are concepts they're willing to go with. But it hasn't technically been agreed to. Nothing has been agreed to here at all. So the fact is we're very likely to see those things because they've conceded them, but it could always change. Like, they could always take it off the table as part of the ongoing negotiations. But we are likely to see a universal designated hitter. Nothing, that's not really news. We've known that for a long time. The elimination of the penalty for signing qualified free agents, I keep doing air quotes today, but when you get the qualifying offer and a player rejects it and then they sign somewhere else, there's a penalty to the signing team. And so it's likely that that's going to go away as well. And that's a good thing because it really hasn't helped anyone, and it's really been a drag on free agency. But the other thing Manfred said is that right now spring training is still scheduled to start on time. He didn't officially announce a delay to spring training, but it doesn't take much to see that they basically would have to agree to a deal on Saturday or Sunday in order for spring training to start on time. The first official report date is the 16th of February. So that is next Wednesday. You heard it here first. You didn't hear it here first. You probably heard this from a lot of people, but that's not going to happen. Even if they miraculously agree to a deal, which also isn't going to happen this weekend, there would still probably possibly be a delay. I'm going to continue to say that just think about the frenzy, though, that's going to take place when a deal is finally reached. There are so many quality free agents. There's Seiya Suzuki, who's been posted from Japan. So it's going to be a madhouse, and I look forward to that. But until then, we're just kind of stuck in a holding pattern. So coming up next, more from this Rob Manfred press conference, and then we're going to dip into some mailbag questions that I've been sitting on for about a week here, but we've got some good ones, including talking about which Giants prospects do I expect to see more of in 2022. So all of that is coming up next, but first, this is the time of year that I've pretty much given up on all of my New Year's resolutions, but not this year. I'm sticking to my resolution to eat right thanks to Built Bar. It almost feels like it's not really a resolution because I actually enjoy eating them. Have you tried the Puffs? If you haven't, you're missing out on one of Built Bar's best tasting bars. Puffs are the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. Yes, you heard me right. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy, they're not just a protein bar, they're a treat, and they're covered in 100% real chocolate. Go to BuiltBar.com and scroll down to their macros chart. You'll be blown away. High protein, low calorie, high fiber, low carb. Most Built Bars contain just 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Truly amazing, especially when you factor in the incredible taste of every single bar. Go to BuiltBar.com, use promo code LOCKED15, and get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at BuiltBar.com. All right, as promised, we are going to talk more about the commissioner meeting with the media in Florida. What did he have to say? What did he not have to say? And we're going to dip into some mailbag questions when we're done, kind of getting you up to speed on the latest with the lockout. It's Super Week, brought to you by Get Upside, and there's no better place to get coverage of the big game than the Locked On NFL podcast. Locked On Bengals and Locked On Rams are in LA all week covering the big game. I think I speak for everyone when I say go Bengals, right? Not the biggest football guy, but we don't like LA, right? Yeah, I don't even have to ask. That's just a given. Go Bengals. So anyway, let's continue this conversation. Rob Manfred meets with the media, says a bunch of nonsense. I mean, that was kind of a Freudian slip there. Says a bunch of nonsense. What I mean is that it was all spin, right? He's not. I think a lot of people think of the commissioner of baseball. I did before I kind of got into the media side of the game and I was younger. I just kind of thought the commissioner of baseball was there to represent both sides. He was there to represent the players and the owners. But really, the commissioner, I mean, he's chosen by the owners. Players don't have a say in who the commissioner is. And he represents the owners. So he's kind of like the Tony Clark of the owners. So when they meet with the media, they're just trying to spin it. And I don't care what you have to say to the press, really. It's good that he meets with the media and they get to ask questions. But at the same time, I mean, he said somebody asked him about whether owning a team is a good investment, and he went on this whole thing about how it's worse than investing in the stock market, and that may be true. And I think it goes both ways. There is a little bit of misperception about what it's really like financially to own a team. People are always talking about the kind of valuation of the franchise, but that's not how they get cash to like pay payrolls, right? It's not a material excuse me, that was my keyboard. It's not a liquid asset, right? The value of their franchise. And so you still have to pay these hundreds of millions of dollars. And so it kind of does I think that they base their payrolls off revenues as opposed to the values of the franchise. That's kind of what I'm trying to say. And that's what he was saying. He said, when you factor in the cost up front of actually purchasing a team plus revenues, I don't know. That's why I'm saying it was kind of a bunch of nonsense. I don't really care what he has to say about this. He says the return on those investments is below what you'd expect to get in the stock market. And he added that there was a greater risk in owning a team and talked about the purchase price of the team and money invested into the club on a year-over-year basis. Yeah, so who cares? Who cares about that? What I care about is, can they reach a deal and can we get some baseball, please? And so far, no delays, right? We're not officially into delay season yet, but we are very, very close. Usually the Super Bowl ends and baseball begins, but unless there's a ton of progress, it's going to be huge what this deal is on Saturday, or what this proposal is on Saturday. If the two sides come away with it with any kind of optimism, I'm going to turn optimistic. Like, a lot is going to hinge on this. If the league makes a proposal and the players come away just grumbling more of the same, saying it's not a fair deal at all, and of course we'll have to look at what are the details of this proposal, and we'll have our own kind of independent analysis, because it goes both ways. The players also spin their perception of this. They talk to the media. I will just say the players have a new kind of avenue for expressing themselves and connecting with fans than they've had in past labor disputes, and that is Twitter and social media. So in the past, they didn't have a voice to be able to directly communicate with the fans, and these days they have that means of communication, and the league really doesn't. So the players are all over Twitter. Alex Wood has been one of these active on Twitter players, kind of responding. He had something to say, I think, today in response to Manfred's press conference. He had something to say a few days ago that got featured in a big article in The Athletic. And Max Scherzer has had things to say. And many players have been vocal on social media, and that's helping their kind of, again, spin. And that's why I try to kind of stay away from that. And I mean, but it does. I think that overwhelmingly fans side with the players in this dispute, and that wasn't the case in previous labor disputes. Maybe to some degree, but not to the degree I think that we see right now. So I don't know exactly where I was going with that, but it's a noteworthy element to this process, and we saw it when the league proposed having the federal mediation. And the players were like, no, this is why this doesn't make sense. We're ready to bargain. Let's talk. Let's discuss this. Let's get baseball back. And I think that had an effect on public opinion. And so that's kind of where we stand. Let's move on, though. Let's move on to this mailbag, kind of a random mixture of topics today. But I wanted to get you up to speed on the latest with the lockout. We will always be here to cover it whenever there's any significant news related to the lockout. And so, again, I was trying to say that Saturday is a big deal. So Monday's show is going to be a big one, and we're going to have the latest on what they talk about. But jumping into the mailbag question, let's just squeeze one in here really quick. Razor Ramen asks, which of the Giants prospects, if any, do you see playing for the Giants in 2022? So I don't know exactly what your definition of a prospect is. Like, technically, Joey Bart is still a prospect, and I think everybody knows that he's very likely to be a major part of this year's Giants team. And actually, one of the next mailbag questions we have is about the catcher position, but of course, Joey Bart. How about Elliot Ramos? I think he's the next kind of guy who stands out as a name that people are going to be interested to hear me say as an answer here. And the fact is, Elliot Ramos, he's got the upper minors experience, right? He reached Double-A in 2019. He was at the alternate site in 2020. He started the year in Double-A in 2021, and he got up to Triple-A in 2021. So he's got the upper minors experience. He didn't really do well in Triple-A. I would expect him to start 2022 in Triple-A, and he's probably going to make his major league debut this year unless there's an injury or unless he just really never gets it going performance-wise. But he's also on the 40-man roster, which is a big factor, because if you've got a prospect who's not on the 40-man, you have to add them to that 40-man in order to bring them onto your major league roster. And if they're not already there, it requires a corresponding move, DFAing somebody. So it's much easier to get them onto your major league roster throughout the course of a season if they're already on your 40-man to start the year. And so he is. That was because he was Rule 5 eligible, so they needed to add him. Otherwise, another team could pluck him away in the Rule 5 draft, which is supposed to take place in early December, but didn't because of the lockout, but is still likely, in fact, almost certain to happen at some point once the lockout ends. And so coming up next, we're going to talk about more prospects I expect to play for the Giants in 2022, and we'll get to some more mailbag questions as well. But first, BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football continues its march through the playoffs right up to the big game on Sunday. BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just football. BetOnline has up-to-the-minute info on pro and college hoops, NHL, boxing, UFC, along with live real-time updates of current games. And, of course, baseball once that comes back. And we will be talking all about betting opportunities at betonline.net when baseball is back on the market. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing new offers available for the 2022 season. BetOnline is where the game starts. All right, as promised, we are going to continue answering this question about Giants prospects and also getting to some more mailbag questions as well. So as I said, guys already on the 40-man roster are the most obvious answer here. Joey Bart, of course, on the 40-man roster, has major league experience. Buster Posey is retired, so what the heck else are they going to do? We'll get to that question in a second. Some other guys, Jalen Davis, I mean, does he really count as a prospect? He does, but he's on the 40-man. This is one of his last chances. I mean, he has one minor league option left, so they can hold him down in the minors the whole year, but I would expect him to possibly get an opportunity this year. He didn't really. I don't think he played at all at the major league level in 2021, unless I'm misremembering that. So, yeah, I mean, there aren't a ton of guys who are like right there. I mean, on the pitching side, you've got Camilo Doval, technically a prospect. You've got Kervin Castro. You've got Gregory Santos, who was up there with Doval and Castro as guys who are going to be part of that 2021 team, but he got popped with a PED suspension early last year, but he served that suspension. He came back and he was just as nasty as ever, reportedly. And I expect him to maybe take a Camilo Doval like trajectory in 2022. So expect to see something out of Gregory Santos, who can throw 100 miles an hour and has a good breaking ball, much like Camilo Doval. Certainly different body types, but possibly going to take a similar path. Sammy Long, we saw some of him in 2021, and I would expect to see him in probably kind of a similar role, making occasional starts when needed. As we saw, it requires a lot of depth to get through a 162 game season, so guys like Long end up being needed. Sean Jelly is on the 40-man roster and could make his debut in 2022 because of that. And yeah, so it's hard to say exactly, but those are the kind of the main guys. Some of the Giants' best prospects are still in the lower levels of the minors. The Marco Lucianos of the world, Luis Matos, Kyle Harrison. These guys are further down, and I wouldn't expect to see them in 2022. But eventually they'll get here, and we'll start to see the debut of the Giants' very best prospects. I think that they're a year away. Probably 2023 is the hopeful outlook for Matos and Luciano, with the idea being they could reach maybe Double-A this season, and then with a good start to 2023, they could force the issue in 2023. So that's my thoughts on that for now. Although I will admit I am not the number one authority, certainly, on Giants prospects. So, Sports asks, what should be our expectations for catcher? Who will get more at bats, Casali or Bart? What should the Giants' plan be if Bart struggles? So this is like the big question to me that I have been trying to figure out and ask myself all offseason. Ever since Buster Posey retired, and even before that, speculating about the possibility that he could retire, I've been wondering, what are the Giants going to do at catcher? Particularly because we've seen the possible downside of Joey Bart. I don't want to just say he's a failure and a bust at this point. He is 25 years old. It's like do or die time for Joey Bart. Unfortunately, being on the 40-man roster, he hasn't been allowed to communicate with the Giants since the lockout started. So just another ugly negative of this lockout. Like ordinarily, he could have spent all winter kind of working with the hitting coaches to refine his swing and kind of refine his approach. I'm sure they set him up with a program before the lockout started because, of course, they all knew this was going to happen. But it's a negative that he hasn't been able to work with them, and he kind of needs it because he's got some approach issues. He's got some holes in the swing. But what are my expectations? Something is going to have to change. Like they're going to have to make some kind of move, either to bring in an optionable but veteran catcher that, let's say Joey Bart and Kurt Casali have a healthy, strong spring whenever spring happens. They can send this other guy down to be in the high levels of the minors. But what happens if Bart struggles? You can't just send him down right now because you've only got Kurt Casali as the other alternative. You can't have only one catcher, and no offense to Kurt Casali, but not a great hitting catcher, certainly. Good defensive catcher. But to go from Posey as your main guy to Casali as your main guy would be a huge drop-off. I mean, no offense to Casali. It's just we've been spoiled with Buster Posey. But if Bart struggles, and it's a distinct possibility, you have to have somebody else who you can bring up to pair with Casali. So as of yet, they haven't found that other guy. And I just continue to say that a bigger move is still a possibility. Like a trade of Joey Bart is still a possibility. I don't know. I just don't know. I think that the answer has yet to reveal itself to us. But if we're talking about just versus Casali and Bart, I would expect them to give Bart more opportunities than Casali. I would think maybe somewhat of an equal timeshare, and you just hope that Bart shows enough that he earns the majority of playing time, and then kind of shares the position similarly to how Posey and Casali shared it in 2021. But there's got to be a backup plan, and as of yet, it's not in place. And so they're going to do something. I just don't know what it's going to be. And a bigger move just remains a possibility. I don't know how likely it is, but some kind of big trade, something at this catcher position for the Giants. So anyway, that is all the time we have for today. We will be back with another episode tomorrow, doing another mailbag. So look out on Twitter for the prompt, and we will get to a lot more questions tomorrow. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it, leaving a review, telling your friends and family to check us out, liking, commenting, subscribing on YouTube, all that good stuff. So thank you in advance, and thank you to everyone who's done so already. I can't wait to be with you again tomorrow. Thanks again for listening. Stay locked on Giants.